Good evening. I'm going to call the City Council Urban Affairs Committee meeting to order. We have two items on our agenda. One hopefully is quick. It is the continued review of order number 22-100-8721, the communication from Solicitor Grossfield regarding the proposed amendments to Chapter 650 zoning relative to certain provisions concerning mixed use and affordable housing. I'm going to quickly read into the record the email that I received from the solicitor along with the documents that were given to everybody. Good afternoon, Councilor Roby. As requested at the last Urban Affairs Committee meeting attached, please find an updated draft incorporating the committee's requested updates. In summary, the following changes are incorporated. Mixed use amendment is shown in red line format. Clarified application of 650-26 based on zoning district, number of units, type of use. Added clause regarding fractions. The period of affordability changed to in perpetuity. And the guarantee of performance added in the clause to link occupancy permit to having all required documents in place to preserve affordability, and units added to the SHI. Per our discussion, I reviewed whether any of the changes discussed would require a new public hearing. In my opinion, the inclusion of new clauses regarding the affordability, percent of AMI levels, or household income eligibility would result in a need for a new public hearing given the scope of the advertised proposed amendments. For this reason, I did not include these portions at this time. Please let me know if there are any additional changes so that should be part of this updated draft based on the committee meeting, or if you have any questions, comments on the draft. Thanks, Jason Grossfield, City Solicitor. So you all have a copy that he referenced in the red line. The very first one, just to anybody that wasn't at the meeting, there was some questions about exactly what was changed in the mixed use because the original document had deleting and replacing completely with new language, so he took the time to go through and take the new language and red line and underline what is being deleted and what's being added. Everything else, I've looked at this. I believe he incorporated everything that we discussed. Unfortunately, his comments about needing to have a new public hearing brings me to the first discussion, and then we can go through this to see if anybody has other comments. But what I hope to have from this committee tonight is not only approval for this document so that we can actually vote on it at our next meeting, which is the deadline, but then also to get this committee to agree to ask the solicitor as a committee rather than me as the chairman or just a counselor to come up with language that would put in the percentages and then the amount that the people would be paying. So I sent everybody, and again, I keep forgetting to send them to people. So there was a document that I found from DHCD that covers both the percentages, multiple percentages that were available, and then what the rents would be based on that number. And so since we seem to agree that using the DHCD, DHCD sets cities and towns amount, and then the percentage comes from that amount. So I'm hoping that the committee would agree to let the solicitor create language that incorporates that. That changes, my understanding, it changes on a yearly basis, so you don't incorporate or you don't adopt 2022 language, you just document the form, and then going forward, the form would be available for people. So think about that, and then I will just ask for anybody if they have anything that they didn't see in here that we discussed. Councilor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This might have been something that was missed the first time, but I do think it would be worth keeping. Under mixed use on the first page.
Excuse me, can you, can't hear you, Dave.
Sorry. For item 2, mixed use, to achieve a mix of residential business uses such as retail or restaurant that is balanced and compatible to contribute to a vibrant downtown atmosphere, I think would be worth including that type of verbiage as far as what why are you doing this? To contribute to the vibrant downtown atmosphere, I think is an important phrase to include as far as within the mixed use. Aside from that, I didn't really see any other outstanding issues that was worth commenting on. I think it's in great shape.
All right, so you're saying you agree with removing vibrant downtown, or you want to add it back in?
No, I'd like to put that back in. That would
But
be the
I
only
guess
change.
that was the point that I made. This document is not just for downtown, it covers the whole city. So although we want a vibrant downtown, we also want a vibrant everywhere else.
Then possibly a vibrant community instead of downtown. The intent is, to leave it on a positive, not just a,
And I guess I don't think we need any descriptors personally. We just want a mix of residential to business use. And it doesn't have to be vibrant or, and I'm not sure.
I would put it up for a vote and see what the other councilors would,
So where would you like vibrant put?
within item 2, shall contribute to a vibrant community. Balanced and compatible to contribute to a vibrant community. That would be my motion to edit for a change.
So, and again, I'm still having trouble hearing you, so I don't know if it's that you just need to get that closer to achieve a,
To achieve a mix of residential to business uses such as retail or restaurant that is balanced and compatible and contribute to a vibrant community.
all right, you are making that motion?
I am making that motion.
Is there a second on the motion from the committee? No.
Okay.
Did you have anything else? And I thought you, and Council Wagner, did you have anything, or were you just going to discuss this point?
I was just going to comment that I think balanced and compatible is an important qualifiers, and vibrant can actually be open to interpretation. So I was just going to comment, I think balanced and compatible is very descriptive.
All right. Anybody else with anything that they want to change or anything that they see that got missed when the solicitor took this on? If not, if someone would like to make a motion to approve the language as amended.
Motion to approve the language as amended, and what sort of changes do we need the legal
All
department
right,
to
Councilor
do?
Doucette has moved to approve the proposed amendments to Chapter 650 as amended. Is there discussion? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we will have this on the agenda. No changes were made to this, so it will be in proper form. I will ask for a suspension so we can vote on it, and hopefully as a zoning change, nobody will object to it being done in all one evening. And then the discussion on the committee, I can add into the report that the committee agrees that we ask the solicitor to create language that brings us the percentages and then the price. Everybody likes that? Anybody want to make that a motion? I can formally put it in? All right. Any discussion on the?
Madam Chair, I'm not on the committee.
Yes. Councilor Oren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not on your committee, but I do have a concern that our city solicitor has noted that we would need a new public hearing given the scope of the advertised proposed amendments. I have to go with the city solicitor on
And
that.
that's the point, rather than me putting a brand-new document on to have to go through another round, it would coming from the committee. So it will be not on next agenda, but on a following agenda, there will be an order, and an order that will have to be referred to Urban Affairs and referred to the Planning Board, and a public hearing set by both
Okay, you are
bodies.
still planning
We're
that
going
route.
back through the whole,
Okay.
everything, but hopefully it will go a lot quicker because we know what we want to do. And I think we have agreement from the committee and hopefully from this body.
Thank you for that clarification.
So that's the plan. Any further discussion? Then all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that takes care of that piece, and thank you very much for making that an easy process. The next item that we have on our agenda is order number 22-100-8694, which is an application for site plan review from Attorney Brian Falk on behalf of JW Capital Partners LLC for a mixed-use project at 57 Main Street in the Marlborough Village zoning district, referred to Urban Affairs, and we note that we must act on this by March 29th. We did receive an extension to that date. If it looks like we're getting close, we might want to ask for another one. I believe Attorney Falk is here with some information. I know this was referred to us back in October, and then it went to site plan where a lot of work is done, and now it's really back to this body for the very first time. Attorney Falk?
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. And for the record, Brian Falk with Myrick O'Connell on behalf of the applicant JW Capital Partners LLC. With me, you guys can raise your hand as I say it, Principal Will Adams, Chris D'Andrio from Procopio Companies, which is our development and construction partner, and our site engineer, Bruce Salick. We're excited to bring the Exchange Place project before you. We think this project can be transformative and can contribute to a vibrant downtown. This is the type of project that is encouraged in the Marlborough Village District, which allows mixed-use projects as of right following site plan approval by the council. As was mentioned, we filed a while back in September, and we've been working with the site plan committee. We now have the committee's recommendations, so we're ready for the council's review. Just some basics: projects at 57 Main Street, the Row Funeral Home building next to Union Common. Project consists of 5,000 square feet of commercial space all along our Main Street frontage, and we're designing that space to accommodate a restaurant use. The 4 floors above will host 99 residential apartment units. 72 of those will be 1-bedroom. Project will also host on-site parking and private open space for our residents. Project features a courtyard area along Union Common to help extend the plane of open space in that area. This is a view from the east on Main Street with Exchange Street running along the building's long side there. And this is a rear view. Building height is 5 stories, which is just under 52 feet. And as required, the building is stepped down in the back near the neighboring RB district. And for a comparison, the mixed-use project approved for 28 South Bolton Street has a height of 70 feet. So this is considerably smaller. Before I get too far into the weeds, I just wanted to introduce our developer. First, Will Adams from JW Capital Partners. Will has 30 years of experience in real estate investment, significantly with urban infill residential and hospitality development. He's permitted and built nearly 1,000 units in the Boston, New York, and DC markets. Will's working with partner Procopio Companies. Procopio has 50 years of experience in construction development, significant with multifamily projects. Procopio has built and sold over 800 residential units in 11 different projects with 1,400 units under development. You should have a copy of the team's bio in your materials. I bring this up because I think here you have an applicant with a track record of getting projects done. I know some of the recent downtown projects have been stalled, but this project has a very good chance of moving forward quickly because of our experienced team. As I mentioned, this is the type of project encouraged in the Village District zoning ordinance. Back in 2014, MAPC helped the city design the Village District ordinance to encourage redevelopment and new developments downtown to help revitalize the area. MAPC recommended urban-oriented dimensional controls, more by right uses, and accommodations to encourage mixed-use projects just like this. This is a green-oriented project. Village District requires green principles and a sustainable building design. The residential component of this project, which is the top 4 out of 5 floors, will have 100% electric utilities. That's a condition of our draft decision. And we'll use best efforts for the commercial space to be all electric as well. The 7,000 square foot open courtyard area along Union Common is part of the project's private open space. We'll have 15,000 square feet of private open space between the courtyard, balconies, and indoor areas, which far exceeds the 9,900 square feet that we're required to provide under the zoning. As I mentioned, 99 units, 72 will be 1-bedroom or studio, 27 2-bedroom. So 72% of the project is 1-bedroom or less. This unit mix and smaller-sized apartments are geared towards younger residents, particularly those who may work in Marlborough but currently live in Boston, who want to have a shorter commute and keep the urban living arrangement that they enjoy in the city. This is our ground floor. The gray are 28 on-site parking spaces at the ground level. And so the top of that floor plan is Exchange Street. To the right is Main Street. The site plan you have shows 25 spaces, but we've been doing some reconfiguring. We've now got that number up to 28. The total required under zoning is 88. We're able to drop that down to 80 with a dedicated zip car spot on site. And that'll be an amenity to our residents who may not have a car. Village district zoning allows our balance of 52 additional required spaces to be made up through a payment in lieu and the use of city parking spaces within 1,000 feet of the site. There are several city lots that fall within 1,000 feet of our site, which are shown on this locus map here. That includes the city lot on Bolton Street next to First Parish Church, and the lots on either side of South Bolton and the City Hall garage, all within 1,000 feet of our site. A great suggestion that we got from the Site Plan Committee was that we update the parking study that was done back in 2013 when the city was first considering this zoning. MAPC was encouraging the city at the time to follow flexible parking rules, and to back that up, they did a parking study again in 2013, and the conclusion was there was a surplus of parking in the city's downtown lots. We brought in Bob Michaud from MDM Transportation to update the analysis, and you have his report in your materials as well. MDM studied 24-hour periods on Friday, December 16th, Saturday, December 17th, and Tuesday, December 20th. MDM looked at the 3 lots that are within 1,000 feet of our site, Bolton Street, Court Street, and City Hall. MDM study found a surplus of parking as well during the day and overnight that complemented well with a residential use, which has different parking space uses than a commercial use, obviously. MDM noted that the Bolton Street lot closest to our site, other than pickup and drop-off times for the Freeman School, the lot has an 85% vacancy rate. And the Bolton Street lot has 49 spaces, which is almost all of the spaces that were additionally required to have under zoning. And that's a 1.5-minute walk from our site. MDM also noted significant vacancies at the Court Street lot and City Hall garage during times that coincide well with the residential need. We have a condition in the draft decision that you have to work with the city to modify the overnight parking restrictions on some of these lots, and we would work with the Traffic Commission on that. I would imagine some sort of a resident sticker system, but we would work with the Traffic Commission on those rules. I mentioned that we'll have 5,000 square feet of commercial space along our Main Street frontage. When we first began discussing this project with MEDC and the mayor's office, we were planning a smaller commercial footprint. MEDC and the mayor encouraged us to expand our commercial space, and we think ultimately that was a very good idea, both for the project and for the city. So our goal is, again, the commercial space along Main Street is the pink area on the far right. Our goal is to have restaurant uses in that space, and we intend to have a single tenant, but the space could be divided if needed. The goal for that commercial space is a business that's active throughout the day and the evening. Lost Shoe is the model. We're not going to bring them over, but that's the type of thing we have in mind, where you'd have a business that starts early and ends on the later side. So you have that vibrant Main Street space going, which will be a benefit for our residents and also for the whole city. I mentioned 5,000 square feet. That's for our 99 units. That works out to 50 square feet of commercial space per unit. That ratio is actually higher than comparable mixed-use projects that have been approved recently. Also, Marlborough and Lincoln Street, 10,000 square feet of commercial for 276 units, which is about 36 square feet per unit. 28 South Bolton Street, 1,375 square feet of commercial space for 36 units, or 38 square feet per unit. And Eon Main had 3,000 square feet for 67 units, or 44 per unit. So our 50 square feet of commercial per unit is the highest of these different projects that I just mentioned. Just going to walk you through the site briefly before I wrap up. Again, this is the existing site, the former Rowe Funeral Home building. Existing conditions plan, that block, we roughly share 50-50 with the Union Common and our site. Our layout plan showing the building and the lot coverage and landscaped areas. Our landscaping plan, we worked with Priscilla Ryder to make sure we were showing everything and then some. This project will be very well green along its setbacks. We're making good use of that space, in addition to the courtyard that fronts on Union Common, which is to the bottom of that image there. You've seen this, the ground floor, parking towards the back. The orange is our residential lobby and amenity area, and then the pink, the commercial, retail, or restaurant space. First floor, or second floor, all residential. Third and fourth floor layouts, all residential. Fifth floor layout, you see towards the left is a balcony, which is that step-down design, so that the building is stepped down towards the residential component behind it. Top view is along Exchange Street. Bottom left is along Main Street. Bottom right is the rear of the property. And then the top image there is what's fronting Union Common. The way the floors stack up. This, again, the rear view of the building is a good segue to our work with the Site Plan Committee. We had, again, filed the application in September, went right to Site Plan Committee. We met with them 6 times between September and January. The draft decision that's in your materials have a couple of project-specific conditions I just want to run through. First of all, so Exchange Street is towards the middle of that image. Everything that had been proposed for Exchange Street improvements on the prior project at this site are being done by us. We're widening Exchange Street, adding a sidewalk along our frontage. The committee also recommended that we do a 4-foot sidewalk along High Street. Between Bolton and Exchange. So that's shown on that plan. That will complete the block, essentially. There'll be sidewalks all along this block, our project site and Union Common, making it a much more pedestrian-friendly building and site. That High Street sidewalk will also provide convenient access to the Bolton Street parking lot that will be a major place for our residents to use beyond the on-site parking we're providing. We're doing numerous stormwater improvements in the streets, and both those streets will be repaved, Exchange Street and High Street. And we'll also be updating the fencing along Union Common. In your materials, you have our design guidelines score sheet, self-assessment. We're happy to walk through that with you if you like. All right, back to our main image. So longer than I typically do at Urban Affairs, I understand, and I'm up here, but that's because the council hasn't seen this yet. We've been working with Site Plan. I wanted to give everyone a good sense of the project and what we've done with Site Plan to make it a better project. Again, we're excited to bring this project to Marlborough and think it would lead to an influx of people downtown to help support existing and new Main Street businesses. Happy to take your questions. Thank you.
All right. I don't know if you gentlemen want to come sit in the well to be more comfortable. I think all those microphones work, unless you'd rather stand up there, but you look a little uncomfortable, so come on down.
Sure.
I just want to go over a couple things. I know there was some questions from councilors who were not on the committee or even on the council when we approved the Tavern on the Green, which was the original project approved for this. So just quickly, we approved that 86,600 square foot, 5-story building. It included 11,000 square feet of commercial space. It had 55 residential units on the floors, 2 to 5, 23 one-bedroom and 32 two-bedroom, 83 parking spaces in the basement and the ground level. And it needed a special permit due to the lot coverage being 84% when only 80% is allowed. And this increase is due to the proposed exterior patio for commercial use and access ramps required by the ADA, and the applicant agreed to give city a permanent easement on Exchange Street to widen from the current 19 feet to 23 feet, and this was also part of the need for the special permit. So those are the differences, and I guess I just want to put a qualifier. I know, Attorney Falk, you kept saying 72 one-bedroom. My daughter lives in a studio. She doesn't have a bedroom, so it's 70 one-bedroom, 2 studios. Correct. 27 two-bedrooms. Okay. You were throwing me off when you kept saying 72 one-bedrooms, because
Yeah,
it's like
sorry, I
that.
was
That's not the
summarizing.
count.
72, one or less.
Yeah, okay. I am just going to open this up to, I guess I'll just start with committee members, and then I'm sure other counselors have questions. I know this is before us, but everybody should have had plenty of time to look at this. And then if we want to, we can go through the site plan. But first, I think just comments, and I'm just going to start with Councilor Navin, because he has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, thank you for the presentation. It's, it's a sharp-looking building. It's a sharp-looking development. I have a couple of concerns, but I'll start with the positive. I think I was not on the council. I was one of the councilors that the chair referenced that was not on the council when the first project came before, and I was not on the council when we did the downtown village district requirements. That said, I am certainly supportive of something that is going to bring people downtown. One of the reasons I liked the former project was because it was, it was a little bit smaller, quite a bit smaller than this one, but it would also bring people across Bolton Street. We see downtown, right? There's almost this invisible line, that is Bolton Street, and so there's the regular part of Main Street, and then there's basically where East Main starts, and something that brings folks across Bolton Street to a couple of the restaurants that are down there is something that was particularly appealing to me. I'm very glad that the mayor and MEDC influenced your decision. I don't know how, I don't see any bruises, but I think if we looked at your wrists, maybe they were twisted a little bit, and I'm glad they were. Having a restaurant that's going to bring people across is very important. Looking at this, I am still concerned about the size. Going from 55 to 99 is quite a bit. That is a large-looking building for what the neighborhood looks like, so I do have some concerns about that. The thing I'm most concerned about is parking. I think it's a little bit ludicrous that we have some of this flexibility, just personally, my personal opinion, that we are told we are an MBTA community by the Commonwealth, and yet it's 8 miles to the commuter rail station, and I don't know anyone, aside from Councilor Doucette and the president, who are out on their bikes for, dozens of miles a day. So unfortunately, we are a car-based community, and I'm not sure how many people are going to be living there that are not going to have cars. So I have some concerns about that. I think the world in which, and I'm very glad that the site plan talked to you about wanting to put, a refresh on the parking study. I'm not sure, and no slight to your traffic engineer, I don't know how moving forward in a post-pandemic world we can actually calculate how many people need their vehicles, when they need their vehicles, when they're going to be at home, when they're going to be in the office, right? I mean, my own personal office changes, quite frequently. My wife is currently in 1 week out of the month, and then the rest of the time she's home. I don't know how we can actually look at our parking needs right now. And again, that's no slight. I just, taking a 2014 study and updating it where we currently are, I have some concerns. I also have some concerns about the use of the Bolton Street lot. It takes pretty much all of your need, which is great, but it's a city parking lot, and I have some concerns about, if I were living in this building, I would consider that my own personal parking space, and there's not a lot of demand except for the mornings. And, I drove by there this morning. I drive by there most mornings after I do my own daycare drop-off, and that lot's pretty full. And the streets that surround the Freeman School are very full of cars. And if they don't have access to that lot, I am concerned that you're going to continue. I mean, even now with the lot, if you drive down Rice Street at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't. You either have to get in the queue behind the people who are picking their kids up, or turn down Short Street, or turn around, which is impossible. I have some concerns that when people get there in the morning and, folks in this building have parked overnight, they're going to be queued up on Francis Street and on Rice Street and on Washington Street, and that does not seem fair to me. It's a lot that we bought houses with city money and tore them down, and I am not ambivalent to the fact that this is a development that would bring a lot of benefit to the city, and that, you know, we should partner, you know, to help that along. But the parking's a real concern for me, as is the size. To go from 55 units and 83 spots to 99 units and 28 spots is a lot. So I will leave it there. I've taken enough oxygen for now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee? Councilor Doucette, Councilor Landers, I was waiting for your hand to go.
That's all right. You know, I think all of us are going to talk about parking. But what I've noticed in Marlborough, since I've lived here many years, we've got spoiled. We have the two nice parking garages behind this building and up by up further up west. People don't have a tendency. They think that they should walk. Because the other thing that adds to our situation, we haven't had parking meters for years. I bet it's at least 20 years. I personally think, and they kiddingly talk about that Bolton Street parking lot, you know, named after Don Landers, because I'm the one that pushed the mayor to tear those buildings down. And, you know, fortunately, unfortunately, the superintendent's office moved out of there, out of that Freeman building, so that does open it up quite a bit. I'm not up early enough, Mr. Councilor Navin, to see in the morning. You must go by there by 8 or something. When I go back at 9:30. I think the parking can be resolved if we keep in mind that people in Marlborough, or people that move into there, would know that beforehand. They'd realize that there's a, you know, not, you know, 90-second walk to your car. It might be 3 minutes and 90 seconds. You know, quite honestly, you take the Bolton Street lot there, if they come out of this apartment complex, walk up, I imagine we'll do a little more landscaping at the park there. And, it's, you know, you just walk up that pathway, you get by the church, and you're right there. Of course, the church is the one that kind of likes that parking lot. They've used it, and I know I've used that parking lot at times when we've had the Christmas celebrations down at the Common. I've parked there, and I think a few other times I have. But I think if you people, and we talk about it, that we can resolve the parking situation. It's not going to be like it is now, or like it has been for the last 5 years. It's going to be more crowded, it's going to be more congested, and there might be a little more, you know, fighting over who gets what. But this is a great project. It's been a long time coming, and I hope we can resolve that, you know, parking situation, and I don't think we can expect you to put a 3-story parking garage there either, you know. But I hope we work on that, and I think the way you've looked at the different parking lots that are available right now, I think it could be doable. That's all for now. I'll have more to say later, I think.
Councilor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I wanted to make sure Councilor Landers got a chance to speak. But I'm also concerned with parking, as well as surprised on the size, but I think it's a good fit for the community. I think what we would need to do is come up with how do we do overnight parking in a way that possibly you pay for a permit, and that permit gets you access to some of the city lots overnight. And that becomes a way to also pay for the payments on a regular basis, because then they have to pay for a year permit or something like that. Be new stuff that we would need to be addressed. I think a development like this is really forcing us to face that and make sure that we as a council put something like that in place. Because, you know, it's not only just this development. Lincoln Street may have similar issues, plus the other developments that are working downtown. You know, this is something that, you know, we got to figure out what's stopping the developers from finishing the projects, and figure out what we need to add to sweeten the pot, shall we say, make sure that people who move into the city are comfortable with the services available, which includes, while they live in downtown, they have a place to safely park their cars overnight. Thank you.
And I didn't have time. I was planning on it, and I'm hoping that Councilor Ossing has the information. But I know one of the things that we talked about when we did the whole downtown rezoning was we were very cognizant of the fact that the city doesn't own the garages. The CDA owns the garages, so we can't put conditions on them. And that's why it's as vague as it is. They pay money to the city, but then the allocation of them was really not our decision. So I think that is everybody's concern, how this is going to happen. We also put a maximum number of units that could be approved in a year. And because Eon Main never happened and Maryland Green never happened when they should have, those spaces that might be full from those residents at the parking garages aren't there. So the parking counts, to me, I think are off because they're not counting existing. So I'll stop there. I'll let Councilor Wagner.
Summit, thank you. I really like the project. I think the size is going to be startling to some folks, but I think if we're going to build and really work on this vision, these are the kind of projects we're going to see, so I personally like it. Parking's interesting. My first response was, how is that ever going to work? But the more I think about it, you know, if this is targeting younger residents, I mean, I'm thinking when I had my nonprofit, all the people that worked for me were under 30 and nobody had a car. And they got we worked all over the state, and they always seemed to just figure it out, and they got zip cars when they needed it, and they were just very conscious about not wanting to have a car. So I think part of it's my own bias, like I can't imagine living in Marlborough without a car, but it's doable. And thinking about creativity, like who do we want to move there? Well, how about, you know, maybe having conversation with Boston Scientific? What if there were 30 or 40 people who are currently living in Boston that would snap these places up? And if they had a group of them, maybe there could be a shuttle to work, and then they'd only have to, maybe they could do a ride share to get groceries or groceries delivered, and then they often figure it out with friends about how they want to get anywhere else, and when they need a car somewhere, they zip car or rent one. Like, so it's not, I think it's, I don't think it's not a deal breaker for me. I think things are different, and it depends on who's going to live there. Families, I'd say, you know, if it was more like 2 or 3 units, I'd say they're probably going to need cars. But if it's really geared towards young people who are currently living closer to Boston and want to move closer to their jobs in Marlborough, it's not out of the question that they may not even want to have a car. Cars are expensive.
All right. I'm going to now open it up to the rest of the people that are here tonight. Councilor Perlman, you want to?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for the presentation and the comments thus far. And I appreciate, you know, the renderings and the explanation of the different parking studies. I think it is a beautiful building. Obviously, having the mixed-use space is really important. I love Councilor Navin's point about kind of crossing over of Bolton Street. That does seem to be a forgotten part of the downtown strip. I do share many of the concerns that were raised around the parking and mostly the size. I'm sure for most of us know Union Common is a really special place in the city that is, all the events happen down there. It's very historic, and the fact that this building is sort of enveloping that area does concern me, the way the massing is. I didn't see a rendering sort of from Bolton Street looking at the building, and that's a rendering I would like to see because, you know, you would see kind of the layout, the church, and then you'd see this building, and I'd love to see how the stories work out in relation to the shadowing that might happen on the property itself. I know that there was mention of sort of the increased open space within the property, which is great, but if there's a fence there, which is my understanding, it still divides up the area, and I'm sure that's something the church wants as a safety reason and to keep it separate, the private property, and, you know, the church allows us to use Union Common, so that is a divide that makes sense. But it does seem like it sort of diminishes the effect of that openness that you've described. I like the idea that was mentioned, a lot of vegetation with the setbacks. I think that's really important. There's not a lot of green space in the downtown area, so any opportunity to make it more green, I think, is really valuable. And then on the bedroom count, I appreciate Councilor Roby clarifying, the studio versus one bedroom. And to Councilor Navion's earlier point around people maybe working from home more, I don't know if this bedroom breakdown might be the same as we imagine. I know in other projects that have come before us, a discussion about having, home offices and other breakdowns in terms of maybe there's 2 people living there or 1 person, but they need an office. So I would just maybe go back to considering around the bedroom count and making sure that seems feasible. And to the parking, I am someone who's under 30 who commutes and worked in Boston, lives in Marlborough, right? So I'm definitely a demographic here in terms of who might be targeted. And I do think that you can't get around having a vehicle without more public transit. The young people that I know that live in Boston, right? The T is right there, so they don't have to have a car. It's very accessible, and we've been trying to bolster the shuttle system, which I think is a really great asset to get that last mile transit to the commuter rail, and if there's more work to be done there, that could be a possibility. But I think as the system currently stands, the MWRA kind of MWRTA transit is not built out enough to have the bus lane. I do appreciate the kind of mapping of where those bus routes are, because if that could be a more utilized form of transit, there might be more opportunity here with the parking. And I just can imagine there's a snowstorm, somebody parks in one of the garages, and they have to slip across the city. I don't know if that would be as appealing to someone who wants to move here. And I think the project itself is gorgeous. I think it's a very desirable area. People would love to be downtown. It's walkable. I just think that there needs to be more, attention to how that experience might be for someone who lives there. And for people walking up, and then it is very, very tall, and it's just a big mass. So, I guess to end, I would just say a rendering of that directional that I mentioned would be really important, because I see it missing here. And that's something that I think I'm most concerned about, is what that viewpoint looks like, since that's a public space that's going to be utilized, for years to come. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other councilors? Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Chair Roby. Thank you very much. I just wanted to speak to the fact that I represent the most western end of the city, but for most of my life, I've actually lived right here downtown, probably about 2 blocks from here, and it's where my parents still live. My mother worked here at City Hall up until last Wednesday, and the parking, it really does make me nervous, because from just being a resident of downtown and also having family who's worked here, I have a lot of friends who live in the area, and what people complain about most is usually parking and the availability of parking, whether it be during weather events or community events. And I was always excited when I saw more parking become available in the city, when they created the 2 parking garages downtown. I was living downtown when that happened. When they just did the lot on Bolton Street, I was living downtown when that happened. And so a lot of the frustrations that I saw my fellow residents downtown having, they were eased up a lot by the addition of that parking. And so for me, while I also got to enjoy some of the time, I'm thinking back more toward the 80s, when I would walk from my parents' house and come downtown, and there was more of shopping and dining options, I guess, that would appeal to the masses. We would come down to City Hall Music or go to Con Cannons. And, I definitely desire that vibrant downtown where we have that mixed use, and we have people living downtown who are going to be utilizing the shops and maybe even attracting different businesses to downtown. But I am very, very nervous about what the parking situation would mean to the people who already live here and already work here. So I just wanted to share that as somebody who's really, really experienced a life of being a resident of downtown Marlborough. It just makes me nervous that the people who maybe had frustrations about parking and saw some of it ease up would also be very nervous that if this size building went up. And I share Councilor Perlman's opinion that it really is a type of community that you do need a car to navigate around. And so I simply don't see that the majority of residents wouldn't be coming with a personal vehicle. I could see where maybe we don't need one parking spot per unit, that there will be people who might not have a car, but I just feel like for 99 units and that number of parking spaces, I just personally makes me very nervous. Thank you.
Any other counselors? Counselor Orem?
Thank you. Thank you for being here and listening to us. I'd like to concur with some of the counselors, especially Councilor Navin. I think he spelled it all out. My concerns are this. It's in a location that's already a very busy business location. You have a restaurant across the street known as Jake's. They always have trouble with parking. You have CAP and another restaurant at the same location, and they always have trouble with parking. And the problem is that now we're going to cause additional concerns with parking. But more importantly is fairness to these present residents, businesses, and school, our public school. They are utilizing that area as well. So to come in and say you're considering using that parking lot, I think it's also important to talk to the residents in that area of their parking needs. For example, just ride around, even at night, unfortunately, and you'll see lots of cars on these side streets in that neighborhood as well as downtown Marlborough. They're not supposed to be on the streets for winter storms, but they find a way to get off the streets, usually the parking garage. Another concern with parking. On Main Street has not been built. The place across from the Fish Restaurant has not been built. But as I suggest the Fish Restaurant, which used to be open, when I came in for my Rotary meetings at noontime, I couldn't find a space before COVID. So you can't tell me once these restaurants and other businesses get going that parking is not going to be an issue. I think you need to reevaluate your parking overview, because I believe with COVID ending soon, let's hope, businesses being built, we're going to need to start thinking about where to put all these cars. The other note I wanted to make, well, there's others, but do any of you know what a parking space would cost if you were building a new garage, which may come to the forefront if this becomes an issue with parking, not just your place, but all the others? Does anyone know that? I've been told up to $30,000 a space for a parking garage, not a parking lot, a garage. That's a lot more than what you're considering paying for parking. And we need to get that updated as well with our engineers and our people in the city. But again, you have a church there that utilizes parking. You got me as a resident going down in the summer to our summer concerts, utilizing parking in that parking lot. Now I go down and there's no spaces. Where do I park? Do I have to go half mile up on Francis Street maybe? It's a bigger picture than I think what's being presented to us tonight. And take those into consideration, especially your new neighbors that are already there. But there's some other concerns too I would like to bring up. I brought up the 30,000. I know MEDC is encouraging this, but the size to increase 100%, I can't support that. And I'm leading the government with these 11 people here, and we answer to our residents and our constituents. And I can tell you, we're going to be on the campaign trail this year, and they're going to be speaking loudly down in this area about the concern of parking. Not just because of your project, just because of the concern that we already have. Like I say, they're out on the streets in the winter now. There's no place for parking. You go up where I used to live up the street here, they're all on the streets. Can't even get through at times. Parking is an issue. I live here. I know it. No matter how many studies you do, I know what the issues are in the center of this city, because I lived in the center of this city for many years of my life. I need more information. That study, I think, is not accurate. And with that, again, I echo what Councilor Navin said, and the other councilors as well. And it looks beautiful. I just think it's in the wrong area for the present situation. If this was the 22nd century, maybe where we all land on a roof and head off the roof, it may work. But I don't see it working at this present time with the volume you're putting in that neighborhood. And remember, you got to be fair to your fellow residents in that area. and I don't think this is being fair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Orem. Any other councilors? Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, a lot has been said in going forward with the parking. Looking at the engineering and the planning of this structure, is there any room that you can perceive that you would have space to increase the parking in the building structure itself? Have you kind of looked forward, going forward engineering-wise? Is there any wiggle room to increase the parking on the site?
So, I mean, one way to get more parking on the ground floor is to lose some of the commercial space that we don't want, and we don't think the city would want. And that's an obvious way to make up. And an earlier version of the plan did show more parking on site and less commercial, and that was, ultimately determined to be not the right mix for the project. In terms of additional places to put parking, there have been a lot of comparisons to the former proposal for this site. And I just a couple of notes. First of all, the developer of that project is the current owner of the site. He bought the site from Rowe. He is marketing the site for sale. He is not marketing those plans for sale. Those plans have proven not to be commercially viable. So to dig down and put in more parking that was proposed there, it's just not cost effective. It doesn't work for the project. Comparison to the size, I don't dispute that the number of units has gone up. The total number of bedrooms between those two projects is actually only up 44% because that project was roughly half one bedroom, half two bedroom. We're 72%, one or studio. The overall size, this project takes up a smaller envelope than that project. That former project was actually taller by a few feet and took up more of the lot. That's why they needed a special permit for lot coverage. So we have been more efficient with the units to the overall size of the building. We designed it so it would be a viable project. And so, adding parking really would come at the cost of commercial space, which, again, we think 5,000 square feet is a good size for the type of business that we want to have there, and then I think that the city would want to have there to make it a true mixed-use project.
Thank you, Attorney Fogg. Thank you, Chair Roby. Madam Chair.
All right, anybody else who has anything they want to say before we get going here? All right, I think we probably need to go over the site plan permit. I will, before we get to that, if you'll bear with me, read the communication from Priscilla Ryder. Dear Councilor Roby Chair and Urban Affairs Committee members, the Site Plan Review Committee has had numerous meetings regarding 57 Main Street Exchange Place mixed-use project in the Marlborough Village District in order to evaluate the public safety and compliance with the MVD requirements. This project is a large project and consists of a 5-story building with 5,047 square feet of ground floor retail restaurant space along Main Street, 99 residential units, 25 ground floor parking spaces, and a courtyard adjacent to Union Common. The final revised plans we reviewed are dated last revised January 19th, 2023. This revised plan set does include a new sidewalk on High Street and a parking analysis to ensure adequate off-site parking for such a development. Both these items we believe are necessary to ensure public safety and a well-functioning development. As the City Council is a site plan review permit issuing authority in the Marlborough Village District, we are providing the attached recommended conditions for your consideration. The highlighted sections of the conditions are those which may need further deliberation by your committee or may need further discussion based on any changes the Urban Affairs Committee may make. However, there are several criteria in the Marlborough Village District that the Site Plan Review Committee has not evaluated, as we believe these are aesthetic in nature and better determined by the City Council in your capacity as the Site Plan Review Permit Issuing Authority. Specifically, we've left the following standards for you to review. 65034, the design standards. This section relates to the design, scale, neighborhood context, building materials. And 65034 signage. The Marlborough Village District has specific signage requirements that are meant to blend into the downtown aesthetics. Please let me know if you have any questions on the above. If you need one of us to attend your meeting, please let us know. On behalf of the Site Plan Review Committee, Priscilla Ryder. So she did mention the design standards. As Attorney Falk had mentioned too, they did do their own analysis. I think the idea behind the council approving this was the council members were supposed to do their own evaluation and then kind of come up with something, so I don't know if anybody did that or not. But I will just go through the site plan permit that we have, remembering that site plan permits only require 6 votes, special permits require 8. So what is highlighted on here are the plans, because I think they need to specify the last revision date, which I think we have the most recent, so that is the date that was mentioned in Ms. Ryder's letter. The final conditions, A is the site conformance, and it's basically talking about the construction will conform to Chapter 270 of the Code of the City of Marlborough and conform to appropriate national, state, and City of Marlborough codes and regulations. B is prior to the issuance of a building permit. It's the construction, staging, and safety plan with the idea that the applicant completes the project in accordance with the plan that is reviewed by the site plan committee and approved. And I guess what I guess the solicitor is no longer with us. I would ask that site plan committee anywhere in this document be site plan review committee to differentiate from the council, who's the site plan authority. The site plan review committee, I think, is their official title. And then who's missing from this, approved by the building commissioner, the fire chief, police chief, and city engineer. Since it's submitted for review by the site plan review committee, then I think it should just be approved by them, rather than you're not counting the conservation officer, and you're not counting, not you, but whoever wrote this, the Board of Health officer isn't mentioned. So either add them in or don't delineate and just say they review it, they approve it. And I will make those points to the solicitor, who I would assume will look at this and make sure it's meeting other proper legal language. The construction plan shall provide detailed information that includes all kinds of information that construction vehicles, traffic management, construction fencing, dedicated, illuminated, and covered pedestrian walkways, and the sequencing of construction of the project, which may be interesting if there are multiple projects going on downtown. Number 2 is the green design. And as mentioned, the residential units shall have all electric utilities, including heat, air conditioning, and hot water. It does say that it will meet the Section 650-34 of the zoning ordinance. Marlborough is currently a green community, so we have code specific to that. I know that there is nothing in here about the retail. I know in the last thing, the special permit that we approved, we did specify that they could have gas. So I don't know if council, if anybody cares if we want to specify, or if we're okay with just that the residential units are all electric. Councilor Doucette.
Madam Chair, I think there's a reference here saying that there was something about best practices for the commercial space. Forgot where I saw the reference to that. But there was a reference in one of these about for commercial space, they're starting to look into phasing out gas as quickly as the residential, because they're finding it's much more efficient. And I think this is fine for now. But I thought there was another reference for the commercial space being best practices. But I forgot where I saw it.
If I may, Madam Chair, I may have misspoken. I'm recalling a similar provision for the Lincoln Street project that had
Yes.
a best practices. That's not in here, but the Lincoln Street project did have that reference that the
Okay.
commercial space would use best efforts.
I probably
Rather
got
than
too
a
confused,
commitment,
you
but
know how
best
that can
efforts.
happen, but yes, thank you.
So if we add in something, and I know a recent video conference that I listened to that was put on by MAPC and MassSave indicated that they're pushing for even restaurants to be electric, which I thought was interesting. So maybe the future is all electric everything. But
I
Council
think the
Wagner?
language was best effort, because I think it was still, I'd like to see it go all, everybody get away from methane gas, because particularly the pollution that it forces people to live in too, so the restaurants deal with that too. But I also, I mean, that was the thing we talked about with the other project, we don't want to necessarily limit some restaurants, if that's going to make renting that space, leasing that space difficult. So I think we said best effort to push, so I'd like to maybe see some language that best effort for the commercial, leasee, tenant, whatever, what are the languages there, and then the electric for the residential section.
Thank you. So I will make a note of that, and I'm sure you've got that too. Number 3 is the rooftop mechanicals. It just says that the elevation drawings will show the areas reserved for rooftop mechanicals. And I guess I am curious, and I know you had shown on the screen, we have pictures. They're very, the roof is covered with rooftop mechanicals, and I'm guessing that's because you're using electric and it's what's required for the heat pumps or the whatever you're using, but there has to be screening, so I know that somewhere else in here is language about the screening, detailed drawings illustrating the type, location, and dimensions of fencing screenings must be provided, and the building commissioner shall confirm that they meet the requirements. So we won't see those, but they will be part of a, I guess, a final document. And I know the building's high, so we're not going to see them, but people, I don't know, flying over in helicopters.
If I may,
Nobody's gonna.
If I may, Madam Chair, so it's a requirement of the zoning that the rooftop mechanicals be screened. It's mentioned here as a condition, but it's a requirement of the zoning anyway. That image is really more of an example. There will be heat pumps on the roof. You know, what the final design looks like, you know, is not clear, but just to give an example of, you know, generally what a roof might look like.
And I take it there is no solar on the roof? Nothing is there, nothing was mentioned?
We haven't committed to it, but we're actively looking at it because it makes a lot of sense and we should have room to do it. It's not something we can necessarily commit to as a condition, but it's looking more and more viable all the time, what's out there, and we should have space to do that.
Okay. Number 4 is the footings. If the footings for the proposed building will be located within the City of Marlborough public way layout, an easement will be required. Are the footings going to be in the city property?
Not likely. This is a standard condition that's in a lot of the site plan approvals for downtown projects where you might have a 0 setback along a sidewalk. Sometimes that's the case. That shouldn't be the case for this project because we have setbacks all around.
Okay. C is construction. There will be a pre-construction meeting. Number 2 is the use of ways during construction. So consistent with that construction plan, all areas for construction staging and offloading, as well as any excavation, long-term construction scaffolding, everything will be part of that plan. Permits are required for street or sidewalk excavation or obstructions. The police chief shall have the discretion and authority to require additional protection or details as needed, and the applicant shall pay to the city the cost for the police detail. Number 3 is OSHA, and again, the contractors have to abide by OSHA regulations. Number 4 is a safety official. The applicant site contractor shall have on the site at all times a qualified construction safety official. Number 5 is the hours of operation. In accordance with Section 431(3)B of the Code of the City of Marlborough, excavation machinery may be operated only during the normal work week from Monday through Saturday, except holidays, between the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., except Sunday, when all use is prohibited, except with variance by the Board of Health or as emergency work. D is the stormwater. The siltation control is required. Stormwater management and maintenance plan is required. Annual reports will be required, and the issuance of the decision confirms compliance with the Marlborough City Code, stormwater management.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Councilor Oram.
Yes, curious within construction why we're not mentioning noise or noise and odor in these conditions, that has to be controlled. I know they mentioned siltation and OSHA standards, but a lot of times when you're building a large project like this, noise and air become concerning, air pollution and noise pollution.
I went through this, compared it with the prior one. There was nothing about it, but I would guess that maybe it is part of that regular, either OSHA or that you're meeting state, federal regulations. The city has a noise ordinance. If they violate it, then they're fined. Okay, E is landscaping, which talks about modifications to the landscape plan, site visit that's required. Prior to sign off, the landscape architect will meet with the conservation officer. Replacement of plantings following 8 months of the date of the final sign-off. Any plant material that's died or is dying shall be replaced. Mulch placement talks about the installation and how that's done. Maintenance, landscaping will be properly maintained and replaced. And this is where I'm going to jump to the original site plan for a language that's not in this, that I wasn't sure. Well, where is it? All right. The original language had in there structural soil, as described on sheet C4, note 8, trees along Exchange Street shall be installed in structural soil. Now, I did look, you have a L1, which looks like your landscape plan, and number 11 talks about structural soil. So if the original was listed in C4, but they had a specific sentence regarding it, is it important enough to add it to this? And I talked to Tom, and he wasn't sure. I don't know why that. And the next one is tree protection report. As noted on sheet C4, note 9, a tree protection report from a certified arborist is to be submitted 1 week prior to the pre-construction meeting noted above. And again, on L1, number 13, there's a little note about that. But if nobody's sure, I can talk to the solicitor to see if it's worth adding them in. I mean, it's just pointing out two very specific things that's in teeny tiny print.
If I may, Madam Chair, when you're saying the original site plan, are you talking about a prior version of this decision?
No,
or the
I'm talking
former
about
project?
Tavern on the Green.
Okay.
Sorry.
So there have been some changes to the language that the conservation officer requires for these types of things that have happened since that project was approved. This is consistent with what Priscilla Ryder has approved for, obviously for this project, but also for the Lincoln Street project as well, in terms of her getting out there to inspect before the trees go in to make sure they're being placed properly. So I certainly, if you want to review with her and the city solicitor whether that language is necessary, but it is a different landscape plan and different notation, so I don't know if they would necessarily line up from the prior decision.
Well, I found those same exact
Okay.
bullet points on the L1 page of the site plan. It's L1 number 11 for the structural soil, and 13 for the tree protection. So it's there in,
Yeah, those, I can answer that, yeah. I can answer that question. So we had those notes on C4 on our sheets, on the civil sheets. And so we gave those notes because I thought it was more appropriate to have them on the landscape plan, because that's where all the plants are being discussed. And so that's why there's a double reference there, because initially those notes were on the C4. And then they were later put on the L2 sheet, on the L1 sheet. So that's why there's a double reference there.
all right, 'cause
So
I guess
it's
I didn't see a C4, so that's why.
Yeah,
there is a
it was
C4.
updated, so now the C4 does not have those notes.
Yeah, because
So
C4
once the
is
landscape-
sewer water.
Yeah, so I gave those notes over to the landscape architect, so he can make sure he has them. That's a standard requirement that Priscilla Ryder wanted to see on there, and that went back to the prior project, and to have the structural planting material for any kind of root system and the protection of the roots of trees during excavation. So there's a methodology that you use to protect the roots, and it entails getting an arborist involved and keeping the roots damp while you're constructing and so on, and then using the right type of materials when you backfill the material around the roots system. So those references are all taken from the standard requirement that Priscilla wanted.
Okay, so we can find out if they really are important enough to be in the site plan, or if the fact that they're on the site plans is sufficient.
I mean, essentially, through this decision, by approving the site plan, every one of those notes, no matter how small, we have to comply with.
All right, it talks about fencing, pending a final agreement between the applicant and First Church of Marlborough, as noted on sheet C1. The chain link fence separating the parcel and the Union Common shall be replaced with a decorative fence to match the general style and appearance of the existing fence that borders Union Common. Pending a final agreement between the applicant and First Church of Marlborough, it is anticipated that the fence shall be located on the applicant's property, and the applicant shall have the long-term maintenance burden of this new installed section of fence. The agreement between the parties shall be submitted to council upon completion. And I guess this is where the pictures sort of confuse me. So I don't know if you can switch back, no, you're back there, to the one that shows that one. No, was there another one at Union Common, or was that that's the only one? So, and I walked by there again, and to me this is very incorrect perception-wise, because it makes it look like the corner is very small when it is, there's actually a lot of land between that building, or where that building will be, and the corner. But currently, there's a fence along the property, and it looks to me on the, I guess on the site plan plans, that you'll be able to walk in between this fence and your building up to a certain point where there's a gate that you can't go any further. But on the drawing of, pages, where the fence is, which page was it? Oh, I'm looking, sorry, wrong thing. On the page where you have the fence, which is C1, I believe. Maybe it is C3.
You can all know C1, C2, C3.
There's one that has the fence noted where you're taking it out. So C1, remove 302 linear feet. When I look at that, it looks like the fence runs along the property, but again, it looks like the gate, and then there's still space for people to walk on your property, like the gate isn't completely blocking. Is that a misunderstanding of the gate?
No, so under existing conditions, there's a 6-foot, and it turns into a 6-foot high chain link fence that runs between the common property and the row property, let's say, and so the project property. So that's a chain link fence, and the Union Common has like a 42-inch high metal picket fence running along Main Street, Bolton Street, and High Street. So what we're proposing is to remove all of the chain link fence, and it's solid chain link fence all the way through. There is a gate, but it's locked. There's a gate that's in the back, and it's not being used. So right now, there's no access to go right between the project site and Union. So any kind of future agreement would have to be obviously approved by everybody. But right now, the understanding is that there's not going to be a gate connecting it because there's no permission granted to connect the two of them.
But the gate that I'm talking about is, it looks like there's a gate to get onto the property, but beside it, you could walk, you could walk between the chain link fence and the gate, not the gate going all the way across.
There is a...
Councilor Wagner, do you have a...
Clarification, doesn't that mean, with the way that it is in the drawing, that the fence bends a 90-degree, the fence bends around the corner and then the gate's here? So it's like fence, 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 then it turns fence and then gate. So it's not a blank space next to the gate, because then the gate would be just floating in the middle of nowhere, not attached to anything.
But
right?
Yeah, so that gate just goes...
The gate doesn't look like it goes all the way across. It's like in the opening from the front on Main Street is not showing to be fully across from the chain link fence to the wall. And to me, it should. You shouldn't be able to walk...
Well, the intent is for there to be a gate there.
Yeah. Yes.
That completely blocks somebody from going onto the property past wherever.
We're required to do that for safety reasons also, because there is a swimming proposal.
Right, and that's what
why
would you let people walk down there when you can't?
It has to be gated.
Yeah, that, it might not be as clear as it should be on the plan, but that will be fully gated, because that courtyard area, as I've called it, is for the residents. It's not going to be for the restaurant or for the public. It's for the residents, so it will be gated to be secure for the residents.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilor Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more question about the gate. So just for clarification, tenant, people living there will be able to use that gate to go into the area on that side of the building?
Yes.
So via fob or something like that?
Fob, key, card, something.
Whatever it is, yeah. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
All right, so continuing on more with the landscaping, talks about mulch placement and then maintenance. F is the parking garage. The building design shall provide for adequate site distances for vehicles exiting the garage. The lower level parking garage is to be for the sole use of the residents of the site, and access shall be such that entering and exiting is controlled by the site's residents. A minimum of 1 parking space per residential unit shall be so designated. Parking areas on the first floor can be utilized by employees and customers. Oh, am I reading the wrong? Oh, okay. That's my problem. I'm reading the old one. Parking garage. The design of the parking garage access shall be such that entering and exiting from the garage is controlled by authorized users. The building design shall provide for adequate site distance for vehicles exiting the garage to provide for pedestrian safety. The parking garage is intended for use by the residents of the site, service providers, and vehicle sharing services authorized to use the site. Parking garage is not intended for public use. And G is the prior to the issuance of the occupancy, certificate of occupancy. We get into that whole payment in lieu of parking. The project contains 99 residential units and therefore must comply with parking space requirements or make a payment in lieu for each space not provided. So the formula works out to 1 bedrooms is 54 spaces, 2 bedrooms, 33 and 75, 33.75, which gets us to 88 spaces. The difference between the parking spaces provided and the parking spaces required. Provided is 25, required is 88, is 63, which will be addressed in strict accordance with Section 650-34E of the zoning ordinance of the City of Marlborough, which says that a payment in lieu equal to $630,000, it's $10,000 for each of the 63 spaces required, shall be paid to the City of Marlborough prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy.
And Madam Chair, if I could just mention, I think I mentioned in my presentation, our most recent updated floor plans have increased the total on-site parking to 28, so these numbers would shift. It would be 28 that are being provided, and you'll have updated site plans that reference that as well. That first section where we've got the blanks for the plans, you'll be getting an updated site plan that show that increased number of on-site parking spaces.
Okay. Notwithstanding the foregoing, if the applicant dedicates one of the on-site spaces for use by a car share service, required on-site parking shall be reduced by 10% in accordance with the section of the zoning for a total of 80 spaces, with the payment in lieu of parking reduced to $550,000. So you're still planning the service?
We are, yes. We have working with a vendor. It's not Zipcar, but the zoning doesn't mean that we have to use that one company, but a ride-sharing service, yes.
Okay.
We'll have a space devoted to that on the site.
And since this is prior to the issuance of the certificate, I guess you're having that documentation will be required so they can actually figure out what it's going to be. And number 2 is off-site parking. The applicant shall work with the city to modify overnight parking restrictions at nearby public parking facilities so that residents of the site may use such facilities in lieu of the site's parking garage. Options to be considered may include amending the regulation to allow for sticker system or other method to achieve parking needs. And this is yellow highlighted, and it's one of the things that Priscilla Ryder mentioned, and to me, this is the part that I totally disagree with. I don't want to turn Bolton Street parking garage, the street, not the garage, the street parking. I think we worked hard at buying that property to make it be usable, and we didn't want overnight parking. And so we, at least I, as somebody who goes to traffic commission meetings, was happy when they made that not overnight parking. And as soon as you turn it into overnight parking, as was mentioned, that lot's going to be full of all the people that have to deal with where do I park my car on those busy streets back up in that section of the city. I don't think you can sticker the people from this complex before you sticker anybody else. So either we need to get that sentence out of there or deal with it, but that's my spiel on that one. Number 3 is the improvements to Exchange and High Street, and there's a whole lot of language where the applicant is going to construct a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk with concrete curbing along the west side of Exchange Street. Within the easement, they're going to widen the paved width of Exchange Street to 23 feet within the existing right-of-way, and the new easement provided that any acceptance of an expanded Exchange Street right-of-way by the city shall leave the site with the minimum setback required by the zoning ordinance. Mill and pave Exchange Street within the limit lines that are marked on the site plan. Reconstruct Exchange Street between the limit line B to Main Street to improve grading, and construct 3 new catch basins with curb inlets on Exchange Street, 1 on High Street. Convert 2 existing drain manholes. Remove the concrete apron at the intersection of Main and Exchange Street. Increase the radius rounding at the intersection of High Street and Exchange Street. Replace the wheelchair ramps remove approximately the top 2 feet of the existing retaining wall along the site and High Street, and install a small wall with the new concrete curb approximately 4 feet from the existing paved edge of High Street. Construct a 4-foot wide concrete sidewalk with concrete curbing along the south side of High Street from Bolton Street to Exchange Street within the existing public way layout. Mill and pave High Street from Bolton Street to Exchange Street within the existing public way layout, and convert the existing catch basin on High Street to a double catch basin. And that's a whole lot of language, but I guess, and I know that I had missed the last of the couple of site plan meetings, but one of the first things that I believe the fire chief wanted was a exit at the northern end of the property to get onto High Street. And so that was arranged, and it's in the site plan. But for me, I want that to be open for the residents to enter, not just exit, which is how it's currently. It's an emergency exit. If I'm going to be parking on the top of Bolton Street in that lot and have to carry my groceries to get into my apartment, I'm not going to walk all the way down Bolton Street and around to the front of this when I can walk in a back door. So that's my personal issue. I know it was not something that I think was pushed hard enough, maybe at site plan. They got what they wanted to have the sidewalk, which I'm thankful you're agreeing to, but that's just another one of my personal issues. All right, where are we? The fencing along Common. The applicant shall update the fencing along the site's boundary with Union Common as shown on the plans. And work within the public way. All work within the public way layout, including but not limited to planting, repaving, pavement milling, and overlay. Pavement markings shall be completed prior to the issuance of final certificate of occupancy. There's information about the as-built plans, and the time for completion is the standard. Work as provided for on the site plan shall be carried into effect and completed within 2 years following the date of issuance of the building permit for the project, unless the City Council grants in writing an extension of time. Signage is in here. Signage is the zoning code, so I'm sure you'll know what you need to do for signs. And utilities. The applicant shall use best efforts to have the overhead utilities along Exchange Street relocated underground or to the opposite side of the street from the building as part of the project's planned improvements to Exchange Street, if such relocation can be approved by the relevant utilities and accomplished as part of the project's ordinary construction timeline. If approved by InGrid and any other relevant utilities, the applicant shall provide updates to the city engineer, and where feasible, provide conduit provision in the roadway before it's repaved to prevent disturbance by InGrid and other relevant utilities in the future. And I wish you the best of luck in getting that one to happen. I know that was discussed a lot, the coordination with InGrid and their timeline for projects.
If I may, Madam Chair, we have a work ticket started, so that's often half the battle.
All right.
Now it's a matter of waiting.
And then H is general provisions. It's just minor changes. We are delegating the Site Plan Review Committee the authority to approve minor changes. Phasing, a final certificate of occupancy shall not be issued until the applicant has complied with all the conditions in this decision, provided, however, that the City Council delegates Site Plan Review Committee the authority to approve the phasing of work, and a temporary certificate of occupancy may be issued for portions of the building, while other portions of the building or site work required by this decision remain incomplete. And number 3 is enforcement. The council designates the building commissioner as the enforcing authority. So that covers the site plan. I don't know if anybody has questions. I wasn't really looking up as that was read through, but those are pretty standard site plan, a little different than a special permit might be. Councilor Doucette.
Madam Chair, just for clarifications as you're going through the list, when you came to off-site parking, was your intent to strike that?
I'm sorry?
Item 2 on page 5, thing about off-site parking. So do you want to strike that from this?
You indicated this was going to be updated. So does the site plan have the current? Is that what you're asking? Again,
Is this item 2, G item 2, is that being stricken or is that being included?
Off-site parking? Did I
Yes.
not read that?
No, you read it. I just wasn't clear whether or not you were striking that from the order or from the conditions or not.
If I can ask clarification, wasn't your concern about the Bolton Street lot?
Yes.
But this
Yeah.
doesn't specify this only applies to the Bolton Street lot. Isn't there an hourly restriction like in the parking garages? So is there other places maybe the people that live here could be able to park in those spaces with a sticker? So it seems to me that's opening up places that are restricted by overnight hours. Maybe we could look at that, and it's not limited to Bolton Street, right?
Right.
But and I guess that's the point that I tried to make. We don't own the city parking garages, so we cannot.
Somebody could make that decision.
It would
not us.
be
But there's
the
other parking
CDA.
aside from Bolton Street that the city owns.
So,
That's not the parking garage.
but I think if you do it for this one, then you're going to have to do it for Eon Main, you're going to have to do it for Maryland Greens project,
Oh, yeah,
because
it's
they
how
are
do we address
doing.
parking in general downtown? I get that.
Yes.
The question I had to you was, are you striking item 2 from this?
I did not propose anything, I
Okay,
just
no, that was just fine.
made my,
Right, I know you don't agree with it, I was just wondering if it stayed within this, that's all. If it stays within it, I'm fine.
if it stays within, you know how I feel, so.
That's fine, I'm fine with that.
I think having this kind of language just makes it, I'll go back to when I proposed the whole changes to zoning, striking this piece was number 1 on my list, and I was asked to hold off on it. So, but unfortunately, because this already existed, it would still
It's a
take
prior
effect.
condition.
But this will be one of the things that I seriously hope this council will remove, letting people buy out parking, because it will become a nightmare.
Clarification, what do you mean by buying out? It's not buying out.
Yes, it is, it's buying out, because you're saying, you're letting them not providing parking and saying they can park in the parking garages. If you now have 3 projects that want to park in the parking garages, and you have the people that live on the other side of Granger who currently park there now because they can't park on the street, where are they going to park?
Well, there is a section on this, where is it? It's towards the end when it talks about how the developers are buying out
Yes.
parking, but this applies to residents who would be, basically, if there's an overnight restriction, that they would have that waived. They're not, so I see it's 2 completely separate things.
But if you start waiving overnight restrictions in the 2 parking garages and allow the lower levels to be parked in overnight, where are the employees that come to work at City Hall and the post office going to park when they show up at 8 o'clock in the morning and a resident's still sitting in that parking space?
Okay, well then,
Madam Chair, if I could clarify, so this provision, it generally, I mean, this would be us working with the Traffic Commission. Quite honestly, this provision should probably be in all the other approvals, and it's not. Because this would not just benefit our project, it would benefit any resident of Marlborough, or create a system for residents to be able to park overnight in some of the city's facilities. But it leaves the decision with the Traffic Commission in terms of how to implement this. And with respect to the payment in lieu, I agree. The payment in lieu is to address the zoning requirement. The zoning requirement is you have to provide off-street parking, but in the village district, you may, through a payment in lieu, comply with that zoning requirement. This is separate. This is really more of a how do we make this work provision, which is really likely going to benefit any of the other projects that would come along. This provision isn't in the 28 South Bolton Street site plan approval, I know, but that project would probably benefit from this as well, looking at this overall.
And I understand that, and I understand that was part of a conversation with site plan, and a lot of site plan people are also on the Traffic Commission. I personally can't believe that the Traffic Commission would vote to change the parking garages overnight regulations. If they do, it's going to be a nightmare. Councilor Landers, did I see a hand?
No, a comment, I had a quiet comment, but this is not the time for it.
Okay. I know that we had received, and I didn't really document them, but we had received a couple of comments from people who live on High Street opposed to this. And I think there was a question of whether a balloon test could be done on this site to just show people exactly how high this building is.
If I may, Madam Chair, we hadn't planned to do one. As I mentioned, the prior project that was approved, received a special permit for this site, is actually taller than our site will be. And in addition, the 28 South Bolton Street project is approved for 70 feet, and we didn't do a balloon test for that. So our thought was, we don't need special permit relief for this project, and certainly not for its height, so we weren't planning to do a balloon test.
Okay. Just, maybe it's just the design of this. It just looks so much bigger than the original project. And maybe it's just the photos and the way it's presented versus just a drawing like the original one was. All right, I don't know where we are in the scheme of things. It's 9 o'clock. We have until, what did I say, March 29th, which means we could wait until the last meeting and suspend to approve this, or we can do something tonight and report it out and then ask for a vote on the 27th. Ooh, that was Councilor Wagner.
Thank you. I think the missing piece for me, because I hear the impact on the community is concerning, but I still go to who would be living there, and maybe, you know, maybe if there was a crib, but I don't know if that could be, certainly it's probably not going to be done by the end of March, but for me to feel comfortable about fully supporting this, I'd like to know, like, is there a way to have a conversation with, say, Boston Scientific, or like when you're thinking about these young people that are that are professionals in Marlborough that would like to live here, that are currently living, say, in Boston, that would jump at a chance like this? Well, is there a way to figure that out? And are they coming with cars? And is there a way to say, you know, I don't even know if it's possible, but thinking about who lives there matters. Because again, if everybody's coming with cars, and even though it's a one-bedroom, it could be a young couple with 2 cars. It doesn't mean it's just one person, 1 car. So is this going to create a nightmare for the entire community? Or is this time to really be creative and think about who live there, partnering with our businesses that have employees that are really would like to live locally, that maybe a good portion of them would want to figure out how to live here without a car, and it wouldn't have as much of an impact. But how do we find that data? So I personally wish I could get that answer before I voted on it. It's a missing piece for me.
I guess I would like the same kind of information too. I know when Boston Scientific, was it, their original plan was to bus people when they, or was it Boston Scientific? Who? From Cambridge when they came out here, and then they were going to stop after a year. And I think they found that their employees wanted to have the busing because either they didn't have a car. I don't know if they want to leave. Why would you leave Cambridge and move to Marlborough if you're a young professional?
It's cheaper.
Much cheaper.
And I guess it's an unknown. We don't know who's going to rent any of the apartments that we have in the city. I mean, there were lots of whole logic people renting the ones.
So I guess my question, to be more concrete, is there a way, if there was a partnership in place where we had some idea who was going to come into this building, like as if we knew, oh, there's 100 people at Boston Scientific that would jump at a chance, that would, I think, inform me about where we're going with this. But if it's a standard open market, anyone could come, it's still a car mentality out in this type of suburbia, and then you've got to figure there's going to be way more cars than this is prepared to handle, and it's going to have a really difficult impact on the community. Because like you said with the garage, like somebody's going to get displaced. So the garage with the sticker, okay, so maybe the garage doesn't make sense, but if, say, stickers were issued where people could park overnight in our garages, well then, like you said, well, where do all the municipal employees, where do the employees go that are currently using those spaces? So those questions would really need to be answered before we greenlighted something like this and just hope for the best, because it could have a really detrimental impact on the people that are already living here and working here.
Yeah, because I think we bought MAPC's plan for downtown with the, hearing them say the people who would park overnight would be gone in the morning for the employees to park. That's not true after COVID and work at home. People aren't leaving to go to work, they're staying. So, did I see a hand over here at some point? Councilor Landers.
The councilor out. We have a building across from the post office. I think it's about 25 years old now. I think there's 12 units there. Be interesting to see what the makeup of the people that live there, because there's not a heck of a lot of parking there. I think there's a little bit on the south side, on the side, you know, kind of curious. I'm trying to think, you know, I've been there enough at the post office and at the chamber. I illegally parked there. And it's just, I'm wondering what the makeup of that small 10 to 12 unit building is. And that would kind of answer your question. You know, I can assume they have, here again, they've been there maybe 20 years. So, and, but I know what you're trying to say, what the makeup of this could be. I have a hard time thinking that someone could live in Marlborough without a car right now. I really mean that. Oh, food for thought. We got a couple, you know, as I mentioned earlier tonight, you know, we got to try to work something out. Parking is a problem, especially with those other, you know, units, developments maybe coming along. We can't give away all these parking places and then hope to develop a couple more. It's a toughie, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? Anybody? Councilor Wagner.
I'm just I'd like to see us schedule another meeting, because what's concerning me about this conversation is it's a really great project. We've talked about other ones going in, but this is going to be the roadblock, the hurdle we can't get past. We'll never get anything done, particularly in this part of town, in the downtown area, if we can't figure out parking, because we're going to keep coming up to this. We're seeing projects that were proposed that are no longer viable. They're not being built, so we can't say, well, oh, we'll just hope nice projects like this go in, but you have to put underground parking in, because you've already said then that's not viable. So I think we're in a conundrum. We need to have another meeting here. What is it going to take for us to move forward? So there's the reality of how do we really get projects supported and launched, but we have to do that in a way that doesn't undermine the existing community.
You're right, and it's my understanding someone is seriously looking at Eon Main to come back in. They have an extension because of the governor's emergency order, and we know that Maryland Green's property, they're had a demolition permit. We're just waiting for them to do the actual building permit, and that's going to be going up. So that's happening. I think we were all excited about Tavern on the Green. I can't get excited about this. So I don't know if there's no one ready to make a motion tonight, or there's more things that you want to think about, discuss. We're kind of at a standstill here.
Madam Chair, I guess we gotta get it out on the floor. What could change between now and our next meeting? I mean, parking is a serious, serious problem. And we just kind of brought up 2 or 3 other blockers, really, the other developments, really. So, you know, what the hell do you do when they come along? So what can happen between, we need another meeting, it's obvious. The 29th of March will be here before we know it. But what can happen? Either, you know, I'm talking to you guys too. What can happen between now and then? And then, you know, it's obvious. You listen to the conversations, you know, Councilor Nabin started off, I added a few things, and then everybody added something. I mean, you know, there's hurdles we have to get over if we're ever gonna, you know, move along on this project. So, I mean, what can happen? What do we need to do? I mean, they're not gonna cut their number of units in half. They're not gonna build a garage underneath. So, I mean, what can happen? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either.
If I may, Madam Chair, I mean, we can certainly, we've done market research that this is a model that will work. We wouldn't be spending the money to do this. We can certainly reach out to some area businesses to see if there's something that you think employees would want. We can see what we can come up with before your next meeting. But, I mean, in terms of the parking, you know, I think the solution that, you know, folks, in terms of how do we work this out, I think is that condition G2, where we work with the Traffic Commission to see what arrangements, you know, can be made with respect to overnight parking to make it work for residents in this area. And again, that condition will benefit this project, but would benefit the other projects as well. And they don't have that burden. We would to work with the Traffic Commission to find a solution. You know, I can't speak to whether other projects are coming or not, but you know, this before you. You know, it's as of right, subject to site plan approval. We're following exactly what the zoning ordinance tells us we're supposed to do in terms of getting this type of a project put together, you know, under the existing rules.
Madam Chair. Sorry, no, go ahead.
Councilor Nabin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate folks trying to think outside of the box on, you know, whether or not we work with local businesses that certainly are going to have a plethora of employees that are looking to probably cut the commute. There is no such thing as a reverse commute, so I can see the draw of that. I do not understand how, even if you're someone who comes west to work at Boston Scientific or, you know, GE Healthcare or any of the other companies we have out here, they're going to run into the same problem we all have, right? I mean, I would love to. I mean, I live 3/4 of a mile from downtown, half a mile from downtown. You know, I am embarrassed to say I can't remember the last time I walked down here. Part of it's because now I got to push a stroller, and it's not that fun to walk up Prospect Street, but that's all right. But I think that's a good idea. I don't know what kind of legalities there are, if there are any sort of like housing issues for renting or whatnot. I think it's a good thing. For me, that's still gonna, it's a good idea. It's something that's nice to see. If it was involved in somewhere in the site plan approval, that would be great. It's still not going to guarantee that we're not going to have a problem on our hand. I think it's great if you guys want to work with local businesses to figure out who you can rent to find a synergy there. It's not going to give me a comfort enough to not be concerned about this parking anymore. And the off-street parking piece for overnight, I think it's, you know, to Brian's point, it's great that it would not just be for this project, that it would be for everybody. But doesn't that just speak to the problem of the fact that now everybody's trying to park in these limited spaces overnight? There are going to be times where it is a choke point. There is not a study you can show me that doesn't believe it. Every time I come down to Main Street during the middle of the week, during a work day, I'm parking on the roof of the parking garage. There's no way around it. It's great that we have parking enforcement now and it's doing that, but guess what? That means more people are now parking in the garage because they're getting tickets when they stay out on Main Street for more than 2 hours. So I think it's great that there would be a fairness for everybody. I just think it's going to exacerbate the problem. Thank you.
Councilor Irish, did you have something?
Just a quick comment, Madam Chair. I know I was in full support on E on the main. The way the garage was structured underground was perfect, so I was completely on board. Also at that time period, we were, the residents in Ward 5 and on Bolton Street and so forth, was also utilizing the IC Church parking lot, which they no longer can utilize. So that number might be skewed a little bit, so I agree with Councilor Navin. I mean, I was completely on board on the other project. It was amazing. The parking was there, and it was vibrant. This is not giving me the same vibe, and it's coming down to the parking. The only thing I could perceive, and I know the way the numbers are with inflation and the economy and the price of square footage to do engineering and building, the only thing I could see is to scale the project down. And I don't see that happening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I may, just to note, Councilor Irish, the EI Main project had roughly the same parking ratio. That project was going to be taking advantage of the parking garage as well, the city parking garage. They weren't providing even a quarter of the parking that was required.
Because I do realize, right, because you took out some of the curb cuts or something on Main Street to kind of utilize some of that parking. So I agree with you.
Well, Councilor Wagner.
Is there, I mean, there's an extensive parking study here, and if you just take the study, it says there's enough parking, right? But we're not really believing it based on most of our personal experience. Maybe a next meeting to, can we spend more time? I don't know, with this, who would be, I guess that's, who do we need to sit down with to really go through the parking study, and are we making, I don't know how much of it is, I'm struggling with how much of it, I'm going with experience and how many times I've tried to come downtown just now without all these projects, and I can't find a space, and I've circled Main Street 5 times, and when there's bad weather, I can't even get in the garages. So like, if this is already a problem, putting all this project, you're sitting here now, but there's more coming, who do we, I don't know, is that just negative based on anecdotal? Do we need to go into this? Somebody really studied all the parking availability? Is there someone we need to sit down with to go through just the parking in more detail? Are we making assumptions that are incorrect? That's what I'm struggling with.
MAPC helped us with the study. I think COVID has thrown a lot of that documentation off, as well as the fact that the projects that were before this one that should have happened and would maybe impact the parking spaces, to show even more that our thinking was flawed, which is why I had my fingers crossed on Main wasn't going to happen. And I could make a change to get rid of that, buy out the parking, and make people have to do a project that provided parking. I mean, nobody's even said anything about where are the people that are going to come to that restaurant going to park? They're going to park in the parking garage by the senior center and
If I may, Madam Chair, so the MAPC parking study in 2013 was 1 day. Our parking study, again, we said they updated it. MDM did a brand new fresh parking study. I mean, it looked at what MAPC had done and compared, and number one, it noted that the Bolton Street parking lot didn't exist at the time. MAPC had concluded in 2013 that there was sufficient capacity in the, at the time, existing parking facilities that the city had, and it was determined that having this type of a zoning ordinance that makes accommodations for the fact that residential parking needs are different than commercial parking needs, and there's complementary parking availability, essentially shared public parking availability. So the MDM study was done on 3 separate days over a 24-hour period rather than one day over the course of a weekday, which is what the MAPC study was. So if anything, this parking study is far more comprehensive and current. It was done in December of 2022, before Christmas holiday. It wasn't like we did it over Christmas vacation. And, you know, you can see right there all the numbers. They spent, you know, did a 24-hour period in all 3 of the lots that are within 1,000 feet of our site and concluded that there is capacity. They took into account the drop-off situation at the Bolton Street lot and still concluded that it's sufficient capacity, that the uses complement each other. When our residents or other residents downtown would be using the parking spaces for their residential needs, which are largely overnight, that's certainly not going to be a time where you're getting use from businesses in the area and institutions in the area. And MDM Transportation has done a lot of engineering work in the city. They're local. Bob Michaud knew exactly, when we called him, he knew exactly what we were talking about, where we were, what to do, had some good ideas in terms of how to do the study. I mean, he knows what he's doing. This is about as fresh and current of a parking study as you're going to get. Again, for an as-of-right use, subject to site plan approval.
Madam Chair.
Councilor Navin.
Thank you. Thanks, Attorney Falk. I appreciate that, and I think that's right. I think that they have done a good and thorough traffic study for the information they have. I think the hard part that, and I referenced it earlier, and I don't want to kind of go back and forth over this, I just don't think you can plan for knowing what your residents are going to have for a work schedule. And we have seen this time and again of what people are doing and what their schedules are. And so if those spots that they're using overnight are now their daytime spots because they're not leaving, and they shouldn't be then expected to get up in the morning and go move their car just so that the people who are going to Freeman School can do drop-off, that is going to, continue to be an issue. And, I think that, you can always find a flaw with the days that someone would use to take 24-hour snapshots of parking downtown. And I'm glad it wasn't Christmas week, but, December is kind of a wonky time, depending on, people aren't going, are not always going out to eat during the week because they've got holiday parties or they've got this and that, the other thing. But, that's not, this is a good-looking study. I'm not sure how you put that future layer on top of it to make me comfortable with something like that, especially if we are working with companies that, are going to have their employees coming in. A lot of the companies that we have been fortunate enough to attract out here are operating in some sort of hybrid work model. So there are going to be more time that they are going to be at home. We have seen time and again that employees are demanding it, and if these companies want to continue to get the best and the brightest, which I'm sure they do, they're going to have some of those negotiations to take place. So I have no qualms about the fact that it was a good study with good data. I just don't think there's a way to properly account for that moving forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I would agree with all of those comments. I thank them for doing a review currently, but we're still sitting here with nobody making a motion and nobody thinking of anything else that they might want for another meeting.
Madam Chair.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Sounds like the applicant is willing to come back with more information, so it definitely sounds like it's worth setting up another meeting at some point, which case then I would assume if no one else is wants to say anything else, it could be a motion to adjourn.
I can certainly check everyone's availability for a meeting next week, the week after. Are you willing to give us another extension? I don't really want to have to be up against a wall on the 29th, 27th with nothing concrete happening.
Madam Chair, if I may get my calendar just so I can consult my availability.
Yeah, because we may be available, but you may not. So that's not going to help us.
Madam Chair, while we're doing that, just to clarify, do the applicants, is that a correct hearing that you feel that you have you want to come back, you have more, you could come back with more information, because I'm kind of hearing, you did the study, that's all the data. I don't,
With respect to a parking study, I don't know what more we can do. We hired a professional traffic engineer who happens to have an office in town and knows the streets. He did, a parking assessment that covered 3 different days, 1 weekend, 2 weekday, on different weeks, over 24-hour periods on all 3 dates. I don't think we can really do anything more than provide that analysis.
We want to have Bob come present.
I mean, we can certainly have, yeah, that's a good point. Well, we can have Bob Michaud come in, who prepared the study, if you want to be able to talk to him live in terms of, how his assumptions, in terms, because this isn't just looking at the spaces, this also takes into account that this is a residential use. That him finding that there is capacity is based on the fact that's a residential use, not a restaurant, not an office, something like that. We can ask to have Bob come in if the committee thinks that would be helpful. In terms of getting information from area employers, we can certainly see what we can come up with. I can't promise that we'll have that, or that we'll get employers to say, yes, I know 99 employees right now that would rent all those units and only half of them have cars. I can't tell you we'll come back with that. Our analysis in putting this project together, knowing what the zoning calls for, knowing what the parking that we can provide is, and knowing what the zoning allows for with respect to parking, brought us to that this is a viable project that can work. We wouldn't do this if we didn't think we would be able to find tenants willing to be here. As I mentioned before, this is a different development team that you've had before you in the downtown area. And I'm not speaking out of school. I represented a lot of those applicants, but they were different type of applicants. They were boutique developers, first-time investors, exploring what they could do with the properties they owned or were looking to buy. Those projects haven't come forward. There's a lot of different factors, I think, at play, but, with this particular applicant, you have a partnership of 2 that have a combined 70-some-odd years of professional work in multifamily development. They can get this done. They've looked at this and feel as though it's a viable project. So again, we can make some inquiries and see if we can come back with some information in that regard, but I can't promise that we'll have something that you're looking for.
with all that experience, through the chair, with all that experience, could you give us an example of a project that's like this, where majority of parking was not, and where that is, and maybe that would be, I'd like to make that conversation, have that phone call with the community. How did it impact, for a similar project size, most of the, only a small amount of parking was provided, the rest was going to be absorbed by the community. I'd like to speak to someone in that community and find out, did it have more of a detrimental impact than you anticipated, or did it work out as planned? That'd be great to have an example.
That is definitely something. Yeah. Buy that information. Would you like us to get a couple of examples?
Yeah, that'd be excellent. I know that would help me.
What's that?
I was saying if you could provide any visuals along with the example, I think that would be useful.
Okay.
All right, so it's Councilor Landers?
We could do that, have a couple of examples, and have, what's the guy's name, Bob, actually come in here, and we could have the conversation that we're trying to have tonight with him.
All right, so taking all that into account, I would still ask for an extension, just because I don't know that we can all get together again. You need to contact the person who did the study, have time to get the plans, and we need to coordinate the committee. Which I don't know that we can really do that tonight, if we just...
Madam Chair, we could agree to a 1-month extension, so it would get us to the end of April. And that should give us time to at least report back, have another meeting with this committee, report back what we're able to, and verify Bob Michaud's availability to come in and talk about his parking analysis.
All right, so you're saying until April 27th or the actual end of April?
If you could remind me, when is the last council meeting in April, or the second? 24? Okay, so, sure, we could extend to the 27th. That would provide time
Okay.
for that meeting to be the vote.
And if I'm remembering correctly, this can be done as a committee vote and then just reported out. Is that correct? All right, so we need to take an official vote by the committee? All right, so I'm going to move, I can't move. Can I ask someone to move that we extend this until April 27th? Councilor Wagner. All right, so we have a motion to extend until April 27th. Is there discussion? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, thank you. I can report that out. And thank you very much for giving us that time so we don't feel like we're pushing. If you can send to Karen dates that you are all available, I can have her survey committee members, and it does give us a little more leeway to set up a meeting, hopefully sooner rather than later, and get more information.
Is this now appropriate to move to adjourn?
It's moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? 3, 4, 5, and we are adjourned at 9:33.